Thanks for tuning in to Chats with Your Self-Worth BFF. This is your host, Michaela Falar, where we are here to skyrocket your self-worth, heal your shit, and take your power back. Welcome to the chat. Hey guys, welcome back to Chats with Your Self-Worth BFF. It's your host, Michaela Falar. I am here today with special guest Kel Cal. I am so thrilled to have her on the podcast. She is such a light, such an amazing woman. I found her actually from another podcast episode. I was just listening to Kel's story and I was like, oh my gosh, everything that she's saying I resonate with so much. Like I have to connect with her. And then I reached out to her like on Instagram. Well, actually, I followed you on Instagram and then you messaged me and I was like, wait, oh my gosh, she's messaging me. This is awesome. And then I was like, and then we were like, we should do a collaboration on the podcast. So I've been on Kel's podcast. If you haven't listened to that, it's such an incredible episode. And I cannot wait for this one because it's just going to be another extension of that incredible episode. Kel, welcome to the podcast. I'll let you intro yourself and share a little bit about you.
Yes, thank you for such a beautiful introduction, Michaela. It is such an honor to be here with you and your listeners, and I am so excited for the conversation that we're going to have because I know it's going to be so juicy and so expansive. So, for your listeners who don't know me yet, I am Kel Cal Karuna. I am a life transformation and empowerment mentor. I am an author, a speaker, a podcast host. And I am just so excited to share everything with you all today.
Yay, welcome. We're so excited to have you here. I know that you are currently living your best life in Bali, which is such a dream. And I also know that this was not always your reality. Like you lived a completely parallel life. And so I would absolutely love for you to share your story on how you went from where were you, right? And then also like your transformation and how you decided to just pack up and move across the country.
Yes, yes, yes. Where to begin? Honestly, if you had told me even 3 years ago, one day you're going to be living in Bali, I would have been like, what are you talking about? Like that's not possible. I live in the United States. And
Mhm.
it's still just like incredible the life that I live. Sometimes I look around and I'm like, wow, how did this happen? And then I'm like, oh wait, I created it. So let's talk about how I
Yes.
created this life that I lived. So, once upon a past life, and by past life, I mean this life, but it just feels like such a past version of myself. It literally
Mm.
feels like another lifetime. So, we're going back to like 2017, 2018. I thought I was living my dream life. I lived in sunny South Florida. I had the beautiful home that I remodeled to perfection. I had a successful business. I had six-pack abs. I had all the things. And I was miserable, absolutely miserable. And one of the contributing factors to the total dissatisfaction in my life was the fact that I was in an emotionally abusive and toxic as fuck marriage, but that was not the sole reason. So I made the decision to leave the marriage in March of 2018. I took what was supposed to be a 2 week trip to visit my sister in Washington State. And it was on that trip that I made the decision that I knew in my heart and soul I needed to make, which was to not only leave the marriage, but to move across the country to restart my life in every possible way. So that was the beginning of my journey. I declared that that was my beginning of my self love and self discovery. And I was determined that it would not be the worst thing that ever happened to me, and that somehow it would be the catalyst to have this second chance in life. But meanwhile, I was in a domestic violence support group. I was broke because the then abusive, now ex husband withdrew every penny from our joint account. I had PTSD. I was seeing therapists, and I was a hot mess, and rightfully so, considering the trauma that I
Yeah.
experienced. And my journey took a lot of detours, which means I had a lot of lessons I needed to learn. So I developed pretty much every coping mechanism that there is: substance abuse, eating disorders, addictions of all kinds, productivity, exercising. But then COVID happened, and my greatest fear came true, which was I was forced to be alone with myself. And that's when I really began to realize that the most toxic relationship of all wasn't the relationship with the ex husband, it was a relationship with myself. So that's when I
Oof.
began to do the deep inner work that I had been avoiding. Because up until then, I was trying to think my way out. I thought I could just use positivity and affirmations to create this new life. But really, I was still holding on to everything from the past emotionally and energetically. So when I began to heal my nervous system, heal my inner child, use somatic practices, and do that deep inner work, that's when my life began to change. That's when I discovered my soul's purpose and began to
Mhm.
build my coaching business. That's when
Mhm.
I began to really connect with my intuition and live a more intuitive life connected to my truth and to my heart.
Mhm.
And that's when I decided to move across the world to a country I had never been to because my intuition told me to. And I've ignored my intuition enough in my life to know that I should not ignore my intuition. So that's how I ended up in
Yes.
Bali. Long
Well,
story,
I
not
love,
so short.
yeah, no, that's such an incredible story. I have a couple questions like to go back.
Yeah,
Because obviously I know what it's like to be in the thick of it and to feel like the world is against you, essentially.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? And to be in that victim matrix.
yeah.
How did you personally step out of your own victim matrix and actually start to make the changes you knew you needed to make when you were in such a like, addicted to or like addicted to the hustle, addicted to substances, or you know what I'm saying? Like, how'd you pull yourself out of that state and into your beginning stages of your healing process?
Yeah, so this really happens in layers, and that is healing. Sometimes we think healing is like a one-time thing, but it happens in layers, and we can heal from the same experience deeper and deeper and deeper. So initially, when I made the decision to leave the marriage, I was starting to have this awakening to what it means to actually be the creator of your own life and to not settle for less than I deserve. So that's when it
Mm,
really started to just become a possibility. But ultimately, I was still stuck in that victim consciousness. And it's because I was outsourcing my personal power. I was making things external of myself responsible. I was still blaming the ex husband. He's the reason, it's because of him. And
yeah.
when I realized that I am the common denominator in my life, when I look at all of these challenges and, experiences that I'm having, the only thing that is the same is me. I basically
Mhm.
recreated the life I was living in Florida in Washington, except instead of having an abusive partner, I was the one that was abusive. I was the one that was controlling my life. I was the one that had all of these, let's call them toxic patterns. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's me. And if I want my life to
Yeah,
change, then I need to change, which is the most empowering place to be in. Because if it's somebody else's fault, you can't change. You're stuck. You're a victim. Poor me. Life is happening to me. But when it's like, wait, cool. I created this reality, which means I get to change it. But this has to happen
exactly.
from a frequency of love, compassion, understanding, and not from a frequency of blame, shame, and judgment. Because it would have been easy to be like, man, I suck. Look at me. Look at all these problems in my life. I created these problems versus, cool, I created these problems. That means I get to create the solutions because you cannot solve the problem from the same frequency that created the problem. And none of it's a
Exactly.
problem anyway, because they're all just
Mm,
lessons that we're here to learn.
hmm. Exactly. It's that perspective that when you shift your perspective, it changes everything. And you in that moment take your power back. You're like, how can I see like the good in this? Where can I there's a lesson to be learned in this. How can I learn this lesson? What am I supposed to be absorbing from it, right? Like that's so empowering and such a good thing, I think, for listeners who maybe are in that state of like the dark night of the soul, right? When everything
Yeah.
seems like it's blowing up in your face, and they feel stuck, they feel like they're not in control, but just to like have this I mean, you guys all know my story, but also to hear Kel's story, and be able to see that, like, we're not special. Like, this is just, it's simply you deciding to see things in a different perspective, in a new light, and then to take inspired action to like make the change.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And this isn't about toxic positivity because, a past
Right.
version of myself might have heard this and would have been like, cool, let's just pretend like everything's great. And even though there's challenging circumstances, like it's all good. And no, it's about celebrating the shit. It's about embracing whatever
Yes.
emotions are there, feeling because that's how you actually heal. But just knowing that this is where your power is by leaning into and diving into whatever you're experiencing and knowing that it's happening for you. It doesn't mean you have to like it. It just means that you have to accept it and you have to decide. You have to decide that you are going to take ownership of your life and create the future that you desire by being present with whatever you are experiencing in the moment.
Exactly. And not let whatever is happening hold power over you, and
Yes.
just
Yes.
keep on keeping on, right? Amazing. Okay. So I want to know how you, because you've created a business from this, right? You're a coach. You
Yes.
are in feminine embodiment coach,
Yeah.
inner child healing. I love all of this, and I would like to kind of ask you, get into this, a few questions. Number one being, how did you, let's say, find the courage to create a business out of literally like your transformation? What clicked
Yeah.
for you there?
Yeah. So often when we want to, live a life of purpose, we go out looking for our purpose and we don't find our purpose because it's not out there. It's within us. It's like trying to find your nose. It's like, where is it? Oh, it's here. It's here all along. We just need to discover it. So it was truly by going on my own inner journey, my inner journey of transformation and spirituality that I realized, like, oh, this is my purpose. I was doing real estate before then, and I realized I wasn't put here on this earth to sell houses. I could do it really well, and I can make a shit ton of money because I did. But that's not my soul's purpose. That doesn't light me up and leave me feeling fulfilled. And
Mm,
it reached a place on my own personal journey where it really felt like my calling and almost a sense of responsibility to share what I've learned. It's like now that I've set myself free, it's my gift to help set other women free. Now that I have discovered all of this within myself, I need to share it with other people. I need to help other women unlock their fullest expression and return home to their self and experience life in a new way. And then it was almost just like there was no other option. It was like pulling me towards it. And sure, it was scary, but we don't need to get rid of the fear. We just need to develop courage. And so often we make the fear wrong. We make the fear mean something's not for us when really the fear is showing us exactly where we need to go. Because
yes.
when you are on the journey of your soul's purpose, that's a spiritual journey in and of itself. That is going to amplify and reveal so many patterns and programs and conditioning that need to be transcended in order for you to fully step into your purpose. So, if you have this vision and this dream for your life or any of your desires, it's not an accident. Like, the word desire itself means of the Father. It is a
Mm-hmm.
divine and sacred message from the universe that this is meant for you. And when we actually commit to moving towards that and not making the fears or the limiting beliefs wrong or mean it's not possible, but meaning it is possible. This is just part of the journey. That's when we get to actually live this fulfilling and magical life.
Exactly. It's like everything just, it's literally the definition of being in alignment. Everything just
Yeah.
aligns for you and is happening
Yeah.
for you the way that it's meant to. On the topic of feminine embodiment, and you coming from a place of like hyper independent, not well,
Mhm.
did you go from like being in your because this happened to me, being in
Yeah.
your like committed relationship, and then being like, I'm getting out of this, I'm done. like, I've got this, I can create everything new on my own and like take care of myself and I don't need no man. So like how is it that like you got out of like that hyper independent mode and then into this like flowy feminine goddess vibe?
Yeah, yeah. So I definitely have been living in a state of hyper masculine energy for the majority of my life. And for the listeners who are like, "What do you mean? You're a woman. What are you talking about masculine energy?" So this is so universal law. So regardless of which gender you identify with, we all have masculine and feminine energies. And as women living in a patriarchal society, there is external conditioning for us to be more in our masculine. And that can be amplified by using those patterns as a coping mechanism to navigate unhealed trauma. So for me, I've always kind of been in this hyper masculine state, the doing, the thinking, the achieving, and being disconnected from my emotions. And there's lots more, but when I did leave the abusive marriage, it definitely amplified as a coping mechanism. And that looked like, I mean, I was the definition of like the boss babe, but it wasn't a good vibe. You know, it's not like you can't be a really successful woman, but it was coming from this place of proving, of trying to achieve, to find my self worth. It was never allowing myself to rest. It was really this addiction to productivity and also being very disconnected from my body, from my emotions. And I mean, even thinking back about like my calendar used to be like time blocked out from the moment I woke up to the moment I passed out at night. There was no time for just no space to just be and to live intuitively. It was like everything was controlled. And I started to have some awareness of this before I moved to Bali. And then once I moved to Bali, that really just dropped in that the way I was living and that hyper masculine energy is not in alignment with the life that I desire to live. So then I went all the way to the other end of the spectrum. I went from being in this state of hyper masculine energy to the state of hyper feminine energy. And that's not healthy either because you need
Yeah.
both. And it really, really required then healing what was beneath those patterns, rebuilding trust with the masculine so that they can work together.
So you mentioned like you went from hyper masculine independence to being way too much in your feminine. How did you find balance in the two, or how would you describe like being in balance as far as your feminine and masculine energies go?
Yeah, so when your masculine and feminine energies are balanced, that's how you're able to truly quench the thirst of your soul. Because if you think about the masculine as a cup without anything in it is just a cup. Like you could bang it, that's cool, but it's not going to do much for you. And then the feminine is the flow. And that flow, water without a cup, that's just a flood. So you really need both. So for me, this looked at identifying these patterns because that's the first step to change anything in life. You have to have the awareness of it. If you don't have the conscious awareness of it, you can't shift or change it. Then, when you identify the patterns that you're living, you get curious about what's beneath these patterns. The healing your relationship with your masculine and feminine energies is very much related to healing your relationships with your mother and father. So that looked like a lot of inner child healing, healing the relationship with my parents, specifically my father, and healing the wounds that were beneath that because that's why we live out these patterns because we're holding on to things emotionally and energetically. And when we're able to heal and release and transcend them, we're able to create new ways of being.
When you say inner child healing, can you elaborate on that a little bit for my listeners?
I would love to because inner child healing is one of my greatest passions in life because it's been such a transformative practice for me. So, your inner child is the child version of you, typically between the ages of about 2 and 8 years old. So, this is the child version of you that is still present within you in your present reality. And it's usually the version of you between 2 and 8, but can also be from actual birth to about age 13. And the reason this version of you is significant is because your inner child coincides with the time that your subconscious was developing. Because during this period in our life, our brain is in a theta wave pattern. And this is the same wave pattern that is used in hypnosis. It's the same wave pattern we go into when we're in deep states of meditation. And it's when our subconscious is developing. So, this is where we really begin to create the beliefs that then dictate and control our life. So, by developing the relationship with our inner child, we get to look at what this version of ourselves is still holding on to. We get to really understand our core wounds on deeper levels so we can heal them. And we get to rewrite the stories from the past that are no longer serving us. It also allows us to step into deeper levels of authenticity because as children, we start to wear these masks. And these are the masks that we wear so we can feel loved, accepted, connected. When on this version of me, I feel this, and then it feels safe. And we are becoming more and more disconnected from our truth. So, inner child healing is a really beautiful practice to strip away everything that you're not and return to the truth of who you are.
What is your favorite practice to heal your inner child?
Yeah, so the first thing you can do is just to recognize that this version of you exists. And I kind of had a lot of resistance to it at first. I'm like, you want me to like talk to 5-year-old me? Like, that's
Mhm.
weird. And then as I started to do it and I started to experience like the benefits and the shifts of it, I'm like, I don't even care if it's weird. It feels good. Like this is truly allowing me to change and heal on so many levels. So this could be even just checking in with this version of yourself and asking her or him like, "Hey, like how are you? I see you. What do you need?" And there might not be a response at first because it's like any relationship. It takes time, intention, and energy to develop. And this version of ourselves is often buried so deep in our subconscious under so many layers of shit that we've piled on top of it. So it may take time for this version of you to feel safe enough to actually come out and express themselves. But the more that you commit to developing the relationship and the more that you just start to ask these questions like, hey, how are you? What do you need? How can I support you? The more that life is going to show you the answers. So you can get a picture of yourself as a child and have that out somewhere just as a reminder. One of the most powerful experiences is to just eye gaze with yourself as a child and just feel into what's there. I have a really, really beautiful inner child workshop that I hosted, and I could put the link to access the replay in the show notes. I'll send that to you
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
I
Yeah,
share
please
so
do. That
much
would be
about that. Yeah.
amazing. I would love to hear
Yeah.
that. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Yeah, I even just like the pit like pulling out the photo albums and looking back at my childhood and then just to like sit there and see even what memories do come up, right? When you have that intention set, like this is what like I'm here to like heal, I'm here to help you, then your inner child will come out and give you like the messages and the downloads that you need to hear in order to take that next step and that next level of healing.
Yes, yeah, and it's just such a beautiful and really gentle and compassionate modality of healing. Sometimes we think healing has to be this intense and aggressive thing, and actually, sometimes
Mm,
that's reinforcing the patterns we're looking to heal from because it becomes this form of like self-aggression. But inner child work is so beautiful. And it's not just about the trauma and the pain that we're carrying from childhood. It's also about the joy and the magic and the fun and the playfulness
totally.
that we
Yeah,
experience
what
as
do
a
you
child.
totally like what did you like to do when you were
Yes.
13, 10, 8? Like going back to that and like doing more of it because that's what I've in my in my 30s, I'm like really going back to that and like what do I want to do? Like what like listening to my inner child and using intuition, right? To like really do what I feel is the most fun, is the most freeing, and not like having any judgment around it at all, right? Like
Yeah,
that's a
yeah.
huge one. I feel like people, like you said in the beginning, like they think that it's weird but like it's just fun. And once you stop
Yeah.
caring about like how other people perceive you, that's like, then you're on the right path.
Yeah, yeah, and if you truly want to heal and transform your life, you gotta stop caring about what other people think about you, and that's one of the patterns to actually heal, but that's another beautiful practice to connect with your inner child. It's to actually do the things that you enjoyed doing as a child, and I hosted
Hmm.
an inner child workshop yesterday. I host weekly in-person workshops here in Bali, and there's a really beautiful man there, and afterwards, he shared with me that he received this message that he remembered he loved drawing as a child, and I'm like, "Oh, that's beautiful. When was the last time you drew?" And he was like, 30 years ago, but I'm going to do it today. And I'm like, "Oh my
Oh,
goodness, that's so magical because that's how we get to connect with our inner child." And it's not like we have this unhealed version of our inner child and this healed version of our inner child. They both coexist. And there's
hmm.
really no separation. The mind likes to create this duality, but they both exist simultaneously. And the healed version of your inner child gets to support the unhealed version, which is all just supporting you because these are just aspects of ourself.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I used to love to draw too. Maybe I should
Mm.
actually pick up this drawing book that I'm staring at right now.
Oh my
That's a
goodness.
sign.
Yes, it absolutely is.
That's a sign. Okay, tell me about your book.
Yes. So, How I Cured My
She's,
Resting
I
Bitch
love
Face
it.
is your guide to stop settling, fall in love with yourself, and create a life you're obsessed with. And it really is my journey. It shares my journey leaving the emotionally abusive and toxic as fuck marriage that I referenced, and all the many detours my journey took, and the framework I used to transform my life by transforming the relationship with myself and really transcending the pattern of getting in my own way. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the only thing stopping us is us.
Yes, so true. So good. So I will put the link for how I cured my resting bitch face in the show notes below as well for you guys. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Another one. What is your favorite self love practice?
My favorite self-love practice. This is a really beautiful
Mm-hmm.
question. And I'm like, oh, I have so many. I think for me,
Mm-hmm.
it's honoring my intuition. Lately, it's really just been
Oh,
honoring my
yes.
intuition and just checking in with myself and asking myself what I need and honoring and listening to whatever comes up. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Most of the time it doesn't make sense. I'm like,
Yeah,
but I think I
intuition
should be
defies
doing
all
this.
logic.
Yes, but really just asking myself, taking the time to intentionally check in with myself and ask myself, like, what do I need? How can I support myself? And listening and honoring that is one of my favorite practices. And it's not like a specific thing, but another practice that I really love is my morning ceremonies. So every single morning, I have this, I call it my morning magic align time, and I set up my sacred altar. And sometimes it involves like a cow ceremony, sometimes it's just connecting with my intuitions and prayers. And it's this time of connection with myself. And it's just such a beautiful way to start the day.
That's amazing. Okay, tell my audience, my people, my family here on the pod, where can we find you? What else? Is there anything else that you want to share before we hop off?
Yes, yeah. So I am on Instagram. I am Kel Cal is my handle. You can reach out to me there. I would love to connect with you. I also have a podcast that you were a guest on, and this is kind of an interesting topic for me right now because I actually have not shared this publicly, but I'm sure by the time this episode is released, it will be announced. I'm ending my podcast.
You are?
I am, and it's not, yeah, it's not because I don't love podcasting. It's because the name of the podcast, the branding, the energy that is associated with this podcast is no longer in alignment with this version of me. It has a lot of attachments to past versions of myself that I no longer resonate with. And it was actually such a challenging decision to make. And I've been feeling so much resistance towards my podcast for
Mm.
probably about a year now. And it's like my
Oh,
heart and
wow.
soul knew that it was no longer in alignment, but my mind needed some time to catch up. And
Mm.
it's giving yourself permission to let go of things that are no longer in alignment that allows you to live a life of integrity. And integrity is one of my core values. So I will be releasing the final episode very soon and giving myself some space for the new vision, for the new podcast to drop in. And this is really just a reflection of living a life of intuition, which I know is one of your core messages of following your intuition. And it
Yes.
doesn't always make sense. You know, even still, I tell people the name of my podcast, Dear Dumb Bitch, and they're like, it's funny, it's so clever. And I'm like, it is, and it's trademarked. And I put 2.5 years of energy and time into it and 158 episodes. And it's like, no, I'm choosing to let it go. So that way I can really be in alignment with my truth. But that being said, there are still so many incredible episodes that will continue to live because it's not like they're going to disappear. I'm going to make sure that they're still available, including your absolutely incredible episode, which is filled with just so much wisdom and magic.
Yes. Well, congratulations on coming to that conclusion and making that choice. And intuition, like it sometimes it doesn't make sense, like it doesn't, but you have to
Yeah.
do what's right by you, right? And so
Yes.
that's amazing, and I'm proud of you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of
Yeah, it's like
course.
life doesn't always make sense in the moment, but it always makes sense looking back. So if we can remember
Mm,
that in the moments, then it creates this
mm-hmm.
deeper level of trust and faith and surrender to just allow
Mm-hmm.
life to unfold the way it's supposed to, rather than clinging and attaching and creating expectations on how we think things should be, because there is a plan much greater than our own. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something to remind yourself in every single moment because it's so easy to forget. So I also have my book that is available on Amazon, and I have a free clarity guide. It's a journaling guide to create clarity. So I'll share
Oh,
that
I
link
love
with you as
that.
well.
Yes, please do. So it's so funny that you bring up this podcast situation because I've been going, I don't have resistance toward my toward like creating the episodes and stuff. But what I do find is that like nothing about like the name, nothing about the branding, I'm redoing it all. So I think that I might take a break, like
Yeah.
maybe 2 weeks or a month off of the podcast situation, still be creating, but like waiting until like I've got the branding shoot done, I've got the name figured out, and I
Mm.
don't want to like force it. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of on the same page as you as far as like just listening to intuition and like doing what feels right, because this was like when I started my podcast, it was such a different version. I mean,
Yeah.
6 months ago, 3 months ago was a different version of me, right? Like we're
Yesterday
always
was a
quantum.
different version of me.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's like we're
Yeah.
always quantum leaping to this like new level of like consciousness and
Yeah.
just ourselves. So, yeah, no, I'm just like, I was like, this isn't like, I'm not anyone's self-worth BFF. Like I actually tell people the things that they do not want to hear. And I feel like a best friend is the person who tells you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. And so I'm just like, there's so many things that I want to change about my podcast. So
Yeah,
you
and
guys
that's
stay
so
tuned for that.
beautiful. Yeah, and it's just such a
Mm-hmm.
powerful reminder to give yourself permission to evolve, to change, to let go of things because you cannot change but remain the same. And you have to let go of things to create space. And sometimes you don't know what's next, but you have to release and create the space. And the universe doesn't like space, it's always going to fill that space in. So when you can hold the space with the vision of what you want or even just the intention, the universe is going to fill it in and then you're going to be amplified in a different frequency.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm like, there's a reason my podcast hasn't blown up yet. And it's because it's this, the name isn't right, the branding isn't right. And maybe that's the same for you, right?
Yeah, I truly resonate with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing, Kel. Well, thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and sharing your energy. I appreciate you so much and your time.
Thank you so much for having me, and I cannot wait to have you as a guest again on my new podcast.
Yes, love it. I'm here for it. I'm so down. All right, love. Thank you guys. Make sure you leave a rating and review if you like this podcast. Make sure you check out Kel Cal. She is absolutely incredible. We love her. And we will all chat soon. Bye.